I trusted my parents with everything I owned, including the keys to my lake house. While I was deployed overseas, risking my life, they promised to look after it. Instead, they sold it. They sold my $450,000 lake house, signed papers that were never theirs to sign, and spent the money like I didn't exist. And the worst part? They thought I would never come back to fight for it. But they were wrong, because the day I walked into that courtroom, my father couldn't even stay standing. My name is Lily Anderson. I'm 31 years old, and I served 6 years in the military. Discipline, loyalty, sacrifice. Those weren't just words to me, they were how I lived. And everything I built in life came from those values, especially that lake house. I bought the lake house when I was 27. It wasn't just a property, it was my dream. A quiet place by the water, surrounded by tall trees, with a wooden dock stretching out into the lake. I saved for years, skipped vacations, worked extra shifts, took every deployment opportunity. While other people spent their money enjoying life, I invested in a future. A place I could come back to when my service was over. A place that felt like peace. But because of my job, I couldn't always be there. So before my last overseas deployment, I made a decision I thought I would never regret. I trusted my parents. I gave them access to the house. Just check on it sometimes, I told them. Make sure everything's okay. My mom hugged me and said, "Of course, sweetheart. You can trust us." My dad nodded. "We'll take care of it like it's ours." I remember smiling, because in that moment, I believed them. The first few months of deployment were intense. Long hours, high stress. No real connection to the outside world except the occasional call or message. Every time I spoke to my mom, she said the same thing. "Everything's fine here, Lily. Don't worry about a thing." So I didn't. I focused on my mission. I did my job. I survived. But something started to feel off. It was small at first. My mom stopped sending pictures of the house. My dad stopped mentioning it at all. Whenever I brought it up, they would quickly change the subject. I told myself I was overthinking. I told myself they were just busy. I told myself my family would never betray me. I was wrong. It happened near the end of my deployment. I finally had a longer call window and decided to check my bank accounts and emails properly for the first time in weeks. That's when I saw it. An email notification from a real estate agency. Subject line, property sale confirmation. My heart stopped. I opened it, and for a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. Because right there, in official documents, with signatures and dates, was my lake house. Marked as sold. I stared at the screen in disbelief. No, this has to be a mistake, I whispered. I checked the buyer's name. I checked the price. 45万美元. I checked the signatures. And that's when my hands started shaking, because the seller's signature line was signed with my name. But it wasn't my signature. It was a forgery. I immediately tried to call my parents. No answer. I called again. And again. Finally, my mom picked up. Her voice was nervous. "Lily, is everything okay?" I didn't waste a second. "What did you do to my house?" Silence. Long, heavy silence. Then, my dad's voice came on the line. "We were going to tell you..." My chest tightened. "Tell me what?" I said, my voice shaking. "That you sold my home? That you signed my name? That you took everything I worked for?" He tried to stay calm. "Lily, listen. It was a good deal. And we needed the money." "Needed the money?" I snapped. "That wasn't yours to sell." My mom started crying in the background. "We thought you wouldn't mind. You're always so busy and you're not even there." Not even there. I was deployed, serving my country, and they used that as an excuse to steal from me. In that moment, something inside me changed. Not just anger, not just pain, but clarity. I realized something I had never fully accepted before. These people didn't respect me. They didn't value my sacrifices. They didn't see me as someone to protect. They saw me as something to use. I ended the call without another word. And that night, in my small military bunk, staring at the ceiling, I made a decision. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I was going to do what I had been trained to do my entire adult life. I was going to fight back, legally, strategically, and completely. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer, a very good one. And when I sent him the documents, the forged signature, and the transaction details, There was a long pause on the line. Then he said something that gave me my first sense of control since this nightmare began. Lily, this is fraud. This is serious fraud. And if everything checks out, he paused, you're going to win this. For the first time since I saw that email, I allowed myself to breathe. Because my parents thought they had taken everything from me, but they forgot one thing. They didn't just betray their daughter. They committed a crime, and I had proof. And when I finally came back home from deployment, I wasn't coming back for a family reunion. I was coming back for justice. When my plane touched down back home, I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel peace. I felt something cold, focused, controlled. Because I wasn't coming back as the daughter they used to control. I was coming back as the woman they had betrayed. The first place I went wasn't my parents' house. It was the lake house, or what used to be mine. I drove down that long, familiar road surrounded by pine trees. Every turn felt like a memory. Every corner felt like a reminder of what I had built with my own sacrifices. But when I reached the driveway, there was a different car parked outside. Strangers' voices inside. And a welcome home sign hanging on the front porch. Just not for me. I stood there for a long moment, staring at it. The house looked the same. The dock, the windows, the wooden steps I had sanded and painted myself. Everything was there. Everything except my ownership, except my name, except my rights. A woman opened the door, smiling politely. Hi, can I help you? I looked at her gently. Hi, I'm sorry to bother you. I just used to own this house. Her smile faded into confusion. Oh, we bought it a few months ago. From a lovely older couple. They said their daughter didn't want it anymore. My chest tightened. My own parents had told people I didn't want it. I nodded slowly. I understand. Thank you. I didn't argue with her, because she wasn't the enemy. She was another victim of my parents' lies. I got back in my car, and I drove straight to the law office. My lawyer, Daniel Brooks, was already waiting for me. Tall, calm, sharp eyes. The kind of man who didn't speak unless he meant every word. He shook my hand firmly. Lily, I've reviewed everything again. The forged signature, the transfer documents, the bank trail. This is one of the clearest fraud cases I've seen. I sat down across from him. So what happens now? He leaned forward slightly. We file a civil case for fraud, property theft, and damages. We also push for a criminal investigation for forgery. My heart pounded. And the house? He took a breath. The buyers appear to be innocent. They bought it in good faith. That makes things more complex, but it doesn't protect your parents from liability. So I can't get the house back? Possibly, but more realistically, you will be compensated fully. Possibly more, considering damages and legal penalties. I nodded slowly. I didn't care about the house anymore. Not really. What I cared about was accountability. Let's do it, I said. The case was filed within the week, and the moment my parents were served with legal papers, everything changed. My phone exploded with calls. First, my mom. Lily, what is this? You're suing us? I kept my voice calm. You sold my property. You forged my signature. This is the consequence. She started crying immediately. We're your parents. You don't take your parents to court, I replied quietly. Parents don't steal from their children. Then my dad called. His voice was no longer calm. What the hell do you think you're doing, Lily? I'm protecting what's mine. You're embarrassing this family. You're going to ruin us. I took a deep breath. You already ruined yourselves the moment you signed my name. He went silent for a second, then said something that confirmed everything I already knew. You wouldn't have even noticed if we didn't tell you. That sentence, that one sentence, burned itself into my memory because it showed exactly how they saw me. Not as their daughter, but as someone they thought they could outsmart. The next few weeks were intense. Lawyers, documents, evidence, every transfer of money from the sale, every signature comparison, every message between my parents and the buyers. Piece by piece, the truth came together, and it wasn't just fraud, it was planned. They had discussed selling my house before I even left for deployment. They had planned to handle the paperwork. They had practiced copying my signature. They had already decided what they would do with the money. Before I even boarded the plane, when my lawyer showed me those messages, I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just sat there, quietly. Because the pain had gone beyond emotion, it had turned into something else. Hizovi. Then came the pre-trial hearing, the first time I saw them face to face since everything happened. My mom looked smaller than I remembered. My dad looked tense, defensive, angry. They avoided eye contact at first, until the judge asked us to stand. And for a brief moment, my dad looked directly at me, and I held his gaze. Calm, unshaken, unafraid. For the first time in my life, he looked uncomfortable in front of me. Their lawyer tried to argue that it was a misunderstanding, that they believed they had permission, that it was a family arrangement gone wrong. But my lawyer stood up and presented the forged documents, the signature comparison, the bank transfers, the messages, the planning, the intent, and suddenly, their story started falling apart. The judge looked down at the documents, then looked at my parents, and said something I will never forget. This is not a misunderstanding. This is deception. That was the moment I knew they weren't going to escape this. But the real battle, the one that would change everything, was still ahead, because the full trial was coming, and when it did, everything would be exposed. The courtroom was silent the morning the trial began. That kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels heavy, like everyone in the room knows something serious is about to happen. I sat at the plaintiff's table, hands folded, posture straight, breathing slow. 6 years in the military taught me how to stay calm under pressure. But this wasn't a battlefield. This was something harder, because this time, the enemy was my own family. Across the room, my parents sat beside their lawyer. My mom looked pale. My dad looked stiff, jaw tight, eyes fixed forward like he was trying to convince himself he still had control. But I could see it, that small crack in his confidence, that fear he couldn't fully hide. Because this wasn't a conversation anymore. This was evidence. This was law. This was consequence. The judge entered, and everyone stood. The trial began. My lawyer, Daniel Brooks, opened first. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't dramatize. He simply told the truth. Your Honor, this case is not about family conflict. It is about fraud. It is about forgery. And it is about the illegal sale of a property belonging to my client, Lily Anderson, while she was deployed overseas serving her country. Every word landed clean, sharp, precise. Then he placed the first document in front of the judge, the forged deed, the fake signature, and side by side, my real signature from official military documents. Even from where I sat, I could see the difference clearly. One was steady and practiced. The other was a poor imitation. My father shifted in his seat. My mother looked down. They both knew this was only the beginning. The defense tried to respond. Their lawyer stood up, trying to sound confident. Your Honor, this was a misunderstanding within a family. The defendants believed they had authority. Daniel cut in immediately. With respect, Your Honor, we will show documented evidence that this was premeditated. Not a misunderstanding. A plan. Then he introduced the messages, text conversations between my parents, emails, notes about listing the property, discussions about price, even messages practicing my signature. The courtroom grew quieter with every piece shown, because this wasn't messy. This wasn't unclear. This was obvious. Then it was time for witness testimony, and the first person called was me. I walked to the stand, swore to tell the truth, and sat down. The courtroom felt like it was watching every breath I took. Daniel approached gently. Lily, can you tell the court what you were doing at the time your property was sold? I was deployed overseas, serving an active duty. Did you give anyone permission to sell your lake house? No. Did you sign any documents related to that sale? No. Did you receive any of the money from the sale? No. Each answer was simple, clear, unshakable, because it was the truth. Then he asked the question that mattered most. Lily, how did you feel when you discovered what had happened? For the first time, my voice paused, because that answer wasn't legal. It was personal. It felt like I lost more than a house, I said quietly. It felt like I lost my family. The courtroom went completely still. Even the judge looked at me for a long moment. Then came the cross-examination. Their lawyer tried to suggest I had implied permission, tried to twist conversations, tried to create doubt. But every time he asked a question, I answered with facts, with records, with clarity. Because I had kept everything, every message, every detail, every truth they hoped I forgot. Then it was my father's turn to testify, and everything changed. He walked to the stand slowly, sat down, swore the oath, but the confidence he used to have was gone. Their lawyer started with simple questions. Did you believe you had permission to sell the house? Yes, he said quickly. Did you think your daughter no longer wanted the property? Yes. Did you intend to harm your daughter in any way? No. But then, Daniel stood up for cross-examination, and the entire atmosphere shifted. He walked up slowly, looked directly at my father, and asked one question. Mr. Anderson, if you believed you had permission, why did you practice copying your daughter's signature before signing the documents? Silence. My father froze. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Daniel held up the printed message, the one where my father had sent a photo of my signature and written, "Make it look like this." The courtroom gasped softly because there was no explanation for that, no excuse, no way out. My father's face turned pale. He tried to speak, stumbled. That's not what it looks like. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He just asked the next question. Then please explain to the court what it is. And in that moment, for the first time in my life, my father had no control, no authority, no power, just truth and consequences. My mother was called next, and her testimony was even weaker. She cried. She said she trusted my father. She said she didn't understand the documents, but the evidence showed her messages too. Her agreement, her involvement, her signature on transfer approvals. She wasn't innocent. She was part of it. By the end of the day, their entire story had fallen apart. Every lie exposed, every excuse broken, every action proven. As we left the courtroom that afternoon, my father tried to walk past me, but he hesitated, just for a second. And in that second, he looked at me, really looked at me, not like a daughter he controlled, but like someone he had underestimated, someone he had wronged, someone who was no longer afraid. And I held his gaze again, calm, steady, unmoved, because the truth was now in the open. The evidence was undeniable, and the only thing left was the verdict. The day of the verdict, the courtroom felt different, heavier, quieter, like everyone inside already knew something serious was about to happen. I sat in my seat, hands resting calmly on the table, but inside, my heart was steady, not racing, not shaking, just ready, because this wasn't about anger anymore. This was about truth and consequences. Across the room, my parents sat side by side. My mother held a tissue in her hand. My father sat stiff, staring straight ahead, jaw tight, trying to look strong, trying to look in control. But I could see it now. That same crack I noticed before had spread, because deep down, he knew what was coming. The judge entered, everyone stood, then sat again, and the courtroom fell completely silent. The judge began reviewing the case. Calm, measured, precise. She summarized the evidence. The forged signature, the property transfer, the financial trail, the communication between my parents, the clear intent. Every point she listed felt like another layer of truth being placed on record. Official, permanent, unavoidable. Then she paused, looked up, and her voice became firmer. After reviewing all submitted evidence and testimony, the court finds that the defendants knowingly committed fraud, forgery, and unlawful sale of property belonging to the plaintiff. Lily Anderson, my mother gasped softly. My father didn't move, but his face went pale. The judge continued. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate act of deception carried out while the plaintiff was deployed and unable to defend her property. Those words cut through the room like a blade, because they said exactly what this was. Not a mistake, not confusion, a betrayal. Then came the part that changed everything. The consequences. The court orders full financial restitution to the plaintiff in the amount of $450,000, representing the value of the property, plus an additional $120,000 in damages and legal penalties. A quiet shock moved through the courtroom, but the judge wasn't finished. Additionally, the court refers this case for criminal investigation regarding forgery and fraud charges. My mother broke into quiet sobs, but my father finally reacted, because in that moment, he understood. This wasn't just about paying money. This was about his actions catching up with him. Legally, publicly, completely. His breathing became heavy. His hand gripped the table. His eyes darted around the courtroom like he was trying to find something, anything to hold on to. But there was nothing left. No lies, no excuse, no way out. The judge looked directly at him and said the final words. Judgment is entered in favor of the plaintiff. And that's when it happened. My father's body went still for a second. Then suddenly, his knees gave out. He collapsed, right there in the courtroom. The man who had controlled every room I had ever seen him in, the man who thought he could take from me without consequence, was now lying on the floor. Unable to stand under the weight of his own actions, people rushed toward him, the bailiff, his lawyer, my mother crying beside him. But I didn't move. I didn't run to him. I didn't speak. I just watched, not with hatred, not with anger, but with something much quieter, something final, because that moment wasn't about revenge. It was about truth.